Can you give us a bit of background? You also run a show in New York. Can you tell us about that, and are there any differences between the show in New York and this London produce show?
Sure. They're similar because they're both located in these two great iconic cities, sort of bowing to each other across the Atlantic, New York and London. The New York show is more established. It's been around. This will be our 5th year. And in New York, we happen to publish the largest produce industry magazine, do a whole bunch of websites. So we have long, deeper roots. But we came here to make friends, and we're making them. And we came here to contribute to the industry, and we feel we're making a good contribution.
Okay, in terms of the economy, I know I had heard you mentioned that you were trying to start this type of event before, but in previous years it wasn't possible. Why is it suddenly possible now, economically, for example, in the climate, to be able to have this London Produce Show this year?
I think it's really structural changes in the retail setting here in London. It used to be just 4 big supermarket chains dominated the UK market, but now you have the so-called hard discounters like Aldi and Lidl coming from Germany and offering a low-end experience. You have the high-end experience at Marks and Spencer and Waitrose. You have American chains like Whole Foods and Costco coming into the market. You have a whole bunch of internet schemes that have entered. So it's really just led to a sort of diversity in the market that didn't exist before. Plus, there's been a kind of explosion in the catering scene. London was never perceived as a real food town, but now it's one of the great culinary capitals of the world. And of course, all those great restaurants often serving non-British people who live in London, have to be serviced. And that's all part of what this is about.
Jim, can you give us some information about your background, how you got into the industry, and what things you do now?
Sure. I grew up in a produce family for unknown generations back in Kiev. We ran a produce wholesale operation, and then my great-grandfather and my grandfather and my father all ran produce operations in New York, and I continued in the family business until I fell to journalism and launched the first magazine for the produce industry in the USA, Produce Business Magazine. And from there, we've just built it into websites, magazines, and events. And this is the pinnacle of those.
And tell us a bit about some of the speakers that you chose for the panel this morning.
Well, we wanted a diversity of sectors within the UK. So we had people who service the retail sector, people who service the restaurant or food service sector. We had producers, we had organic, we had conventional, and then we brought in some interesting people from outside the UK to give a little different perspective on these things. Plus, we had our show ambassador, Valentine Warner, who has a totally different take on the food scene here in the UK.
You've got quite a good presence here at this show from Latin America. Can you tell us about Latin America in the produce sector and how you've seen any developments over the years?
Well, one of the things that makes this show very different from New York, in New York almost all the exhibitors are either North or South American because that is the supply area. But here in the UK, really the whole world is the supply area. So Latin America is part of it, along with other Southern Hemisphere countries like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. It's a vital supply source and a growing one. Major growth after years of establishment down in Chile, up in Peru has really come booming. And here in the UK, you get a lot from Brazil and areas on the Atlantic, of course. So it's really an exciting thing to have a chance for those producers to meet here with people who are in a position to create markets for them.
And what happens here? People meet people and deals get done? What evidence have you seen of this?
Deals do get done, but honestly, many times the most important exchanges are exchanges of ideas, because if people share best practices, share ways of moving ahead, find areas of cooperation, they're able to set things up in a way that will lead to future growth. Many times what they need in Latin America, for example, is investment. They also need sometimes technology. So combining all those things here can lead to business in the years to come.
So even though you were born into produce, so to speak, generation after generation, what do you really like or love about the industry?
Well, it's very exciting. It's fresh, and that means that every day is a new challenge. You have new product to deal with every day, and there's such an explosion now of new varieties, new items. And look, you're on the side of the angels. Everyone knows that the world needs to eat more fruits and vegetables. It'll help us fight obesity issues. It'll help make us healthier. So what can be better than to work in such an exciting industry and also help the world?
And your favorite signature dish?
Oh, I'm much too diplomatic for that. I'll say a fruit salad.